the issue of all this housing that we're seeing being developed on largely on green fields north of Totton, and
Yes, the whole North Totton development, it's absolutely huge, isn't it? It's quite mind-boggling how many houses are going in there. But it's such a difficult thing because obviously we all want more housing for, particularly for younger people to be able to move to, and that is an issue to somehow be able to fit that in. Totton, for instance, its boundary is now completely built on, so there's very little space other than local green spaces where you can build. Whereas I think what going ahead and building on the fields to the north of Totton, it is a problem with backup grazing. Apart from anything else, I mean, apart from the kind of environmental impact and the biodiversity impact and so on, and in local terms, backup grazing is in really, really short supply, worryingly short supply now.
yeah,
So it is a problem where to put people.
this is all basically coming about because of government pressure to meet their imposed housing targets. And I've often said that the New Forest district suffers more than most insofar as within the national park, building is severely constrained.
Yeah.
So we get the donut effect. Everywhere around the national park becomes under intense pressure in order to meet the government house building targets.
Yes, and unfortunately, the housing that's being built and is kind of financially viable and beneficial to the developers who are building it isn't necessarily what we need or what we want. So things like retirement homes, where you're bringing new people in to retire, isn't necessarily beneficial to the area. Whereas affordable homes, starter homes, etc., that would really help to retain some of the young people who at the moment are feeling the need to move off to somewhere else because they just can't afford to live here.
Yeah.
It is a problem.
Do you think that we've got the balance right? I mean, we live in a capitalist society, so what tends to get built is what the developers want to build, and they're motivated primarily by profit. They're not so much motivated by, let's say, building affordable housing for local people. For them, it doesn't much matter whether it's a New Forest young person finding a home here, or whether it's somebody who lives in London who wants to purchase the home as a second home.
Yeah, so there's all sorts about second homes as well, actually. On kind of a superficial level, you would think that second homes are going to make housing more expensive. But actually, if you look at the percentages of the number of second homes that we've got in the area, it's very, very small. So probably the impact is not huge on the price of the houses. What it does do, though, is to take houses kind of out of the ability for people to buy them. So although I personally don't think that it affects the price that much, but I think what it does affect is the number of properties that are available, which, that in itself is an issue, I think.
Yeah.
Because if people can kind of go up the property ladder, that frees up properties at the bottom of the property ladder for new people to come into, which is a thing. And unfortunately, the right to buy has definitely had an impact on council housing, hasn't it, over the years?
We've lost about half the housing stock on the district council as a result of the right to buy.
Yeah. You see, and then we've ended up in the position that we're in, where we can't find homes for everybody that needs them, and of any sort, let alone owning your own home. It seems really unfair that people are working several jobs just to pay rent. And that, I think, is that's such a big issue.
One of the things I often hear from people is a complaint that we're getting all these homes built without necessarily the infrastructure to support it. And when I talk about infrastructure, I'm talking about really practical things like necessary school places or medical practices. as well as the road structure, and even doubts about the ability of our drainage to deal with all the runoff.
Yes, definitely. I think that's a major problem in Totton North. So it is an issue. But there's also so obviously we've got Aldi now near at Calmore, and that's great. It makes shopping a little bit easier for a lot of people in a much more sustainable way, so they can shop without needing the car or the bus trip or whatever. But actually, for those new houses that are being built, it's actually quite difficult for people to walk or cycle to Aldi even. And, then on into the centre of town is even more difficult again. So I agree with you completely. The infrastructure, it's almost, the infrastructure needs to come first and not after as an afterthought,
Yeah.
And we're constantly hearing how developers are building a certain number of houses, a small number of houses, and that then lets them off having to provide the infrastructure. And that's maybe okay if you've got one isolated place that you're building it on. But in the area around the north of Totton, that's a major, major issue, that you've got lots of different small developments that aren't strategically linked, and therefore nobody is building the infrastructure.
I call that gaming the system against the community interest.
Yeah.